Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore. This quote might be recognizable by many as being from The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. This is one of Poe's most popular works, but it also comes from one of the most famous writers of the 19th century. I've always been fascinated by Poe's unique writing style, his skill at storytelling, and the circumstances surrounding his life and his death. The short-lived and tragic life of the poet and storyteller Edgar Allan Poe is often overlooked amongst the expanse of his famous literary works. So what I'd like to do is give a description of the life of Edgar Allan Poe, talk about some of his literary works, and discuss the mysterious circumstances of his death. So let's start at the very beginning. Edgar Allan Poe was born on January 19th, 1809 in Boston to two impoverished actors. His father, David Poe, deserted the family when Edgar was only 1 year old. His mother, Elizabeth Poe, died when he was barely 3. So already, Poe's life has begun with tragedy and death. Poe was taken in by John and Frances Allen, and between the ages of 6 and 11, he lived in England and attended boarding school there. He wasn't very popular, and he was teased for being an unadopted stepson. Throughout the rest of his life, Edgar Allan Poe racked up a large gambling debt. He joined the army, and he lived a life of struggle and poverty. In 1831, Poe moved in with his aunt and her daughter Virginia, and this is around the time that he began his professional writing career. Poe married Virginia when she was only 13. In 1847, she died from tuberculosis. This was just the beginning of the last couple of years of his life and when he began to abuse alcohol. So to talk about some of his works, The Raven is probably his most popular. It's known for the repetition of sound. You can hear it in the first few lines, once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary. And then also throughout the rest of the poem, as the raven repeats the word nevermore. The Telltale Heart is arguably his best short story, and it is known for the madness of a murderer who hears the beating of his victim's heart. Annabel Lee is one of my personal favorite poems. While the theme is death, he wrote it in a way that makes it hauntingly beautiful. The Cask of Amontillado is another good short story. There's actually an amateur short film that's on YouTube that's pretty entertaining. So all of these, the constant theme between all of these is death. Edgar Allan Poe died in the early morning hours of October 7th, 1849. This was the site of his original burial place. He died when he was just 40 years old. The enigmatic circumstances of his death have caused many debates between historians, literary scholars, biographers, and doctors. About a week before his death, Poe's whereabouts were unknown. He was found in Baltimore on October 3rd, described as rather the worse for wear. He was unconscious and was taken to a local hospital. Poe woke the next morning, but was described as appearing incoherent and disoriented. For the next few days, he was in a state of delirium and suffered from tremors and hallucinations, where he would talk to walls and call out an unknown name. On the morning of October 7th, he finally seemed to fall into a state of calm before passing away. While the popular opinion is that Edgar Allan Poe died from the result of a drinking binge, his doctor actually dismissed these reports. Other possibilities that were talked about are brain trauma, brain infection, brain tumors, seizures, and other diseases. The fact is that we may never know what happened to Edgar Allan Poe. So as you can see, Poe led a rather tragic life that ended with a great mystery. Poe's life began with tragedy, and he continued to suffer with poverty and death throughout his lifetime. His death was tragic in and of itself, and remains a mystery to this day. But Poe's life was not without its successes in his writing career. Edgar Allan Poe left behind over 100 literary works that have and will continue to stand the test of time and will live in the hearts of many generations to come.